Thank you for being here this evening and spending your time with us. My name is Daisy. I work for SNHU Career Services. I also work alongside Jim Lindsay, who actually just popped back in from the lobby, it looks like. So, Jim, welcome back. And myself and Jim, alongside Sloan Kelly, will actually be hosting this event this evening. So, again, thank you for being here this evening, and we're looking forward to it. Couple of brief housekeeping things before we get started. I want to let you know that accessibility is important to us here at SNHU, and this is our accessibility statement. Individuals with accessibility needs requiring accommodations may reach out to. If you're an online student, it's oac@snhu.edu, or you can call at 866-305-9430. If you're a campus student, you can email cac@snhu.edu or call 603-644-3118. If you are SNHU staff or faculty, this is actually a clickable link that you can click on and you can navigate there for your information. And as a note too, requests for CART communications or live ASL interpreting require at least 3 weeks advance notice. I also want to let you know about our services here as a career office. So this is a lifelong service to you. As an alumni, we encourage you to reach out and get in touch with us. And again, these are all clickable links, so you're welcome to click on them and connect with us. We can do career advising, we do events like this all the time, and we really encourage that. I will complete my intro spiel. We'll go ahead and introduce the panelists, or they'll introduce themselves. Sloan will host the panel portion of the evening, and then towards the end, I will be covering the Q&A portion. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to submit them in the chat. Callie and Andrew are here in the background doing all the magic work to make sure that the questions get to me so we can go ahead and cover them towards the end of the hour. My goal is to end you as close to the hour as possible. With that, I would ask Melissa to please get us started. If Melissa, you want to come off mute, say a bit about yourself, and we'd love to hear from you.
Sure thing. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I am thrilled to chat with you all today. And feels like it wasn't that long ago that I was in your shoes, starting out, learning and taking this journey. So thrilled to be here. I do freelance photography, and you probably saw my bio ahead of time, so I won't go through all of that information. But I think one of the fun things probably about me is that my niche is food and beverage space with a real focus, particularly in the craft beer industry. And it's been such a joy and a unique perspective. I can't wait to share more information about that with you. I'm based in upstate New York, was formerly in Connecticut for about 20 years. So, have traveled far and wide to photograph breweries and beer within the U.S.
Awesome. Thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Noah, I would love it if you could also come off mute and please introduce yourself.
Hey, how you doing, guys? You hear me?
Yes.
Good. It's a pleasure to be on this panel, first of all. My name is Noah, and I have a background in humanitarian photojournalism. I've been on 15 different humanitarian disaster operations, most notably Hurricane Ian's Adalia and the evacuation of Kabul, Afghanistan. But now I work less in photography and photojournalism, and I'm more management and digital asset management, public affairs, crisis communications, etc. In my career, I've shot for Reuters and Roku, and the main company I work for is Team Rubicon Disaster Response. I'm also a vice commander in the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary, and I'm the advisor to Sector Boston's public affairs efforts. So I lead public affairs efforts throughout the Sector Boston AOR. But yeah, mainly just more like my specialty is more on the ground, like being in the action and capturing the essence of disaster and humanitarian operations.
Thank you. That's so impressive and unique, and thank you for all that you do. We really appreciate that. Zlatko, would you mind introducing yourself as well? Oh, I'm sorry, you're muted, Zlatko.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you. My name is Latko Ibrahimovic. I hold a BA or a Bachelor of Arts degree in Mass Communication, Political Science, and also an IMBA degree, International Masters of Business Administration, from no other than Southern New Hampshire University. My element of photography traces back before I even turned 18. I found it to be a hobby, and all of a sudden it transpired into not only a full-time job, but to a great extent my calling, or something that I always treasure doing. In terms of the shades or the sunglasses, they are prescription glasses, just to let you know. And as any photographer out there, I find them to be one of the most essential things, because the way that we see or protect our vision is the essence also of photography work. I had my work published in places such as Getty Images, also National Geographic to some extent, and I've collaborated with numerous photographers, artists, and in general media workers. So for the past 10 years, I've basically been my own boss at Treasure Media Publishing, and I've guided a small but very efficient team of photographers and also including other multimedia workers.
Awesome, thank you. I joke that my first brush with photography was posing for my mother when I was about 5 and she was getting started. So I understand that being a lifelong thing for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Saren, I would love if you could come off mute, introduce yourself. Hopefully the audio is working okay for you now.
Yes, I finally figured it out.
Perfect.
My name is Saren Christina, and I have a BA in digital photography from SNHU. I have worked as a commercial photographer for about the last 15 years. I worked for Nordstrom Rack, Haute Look for 9 years, almost 10, and the last 4 or 5 years I've worked for Loungefly, which is owned by Funko, and I basically run our department at Loungefly. I come up with all the ideas and creative, and am helping to elevate our current brand style.
Awesome. Thank you so much to Saren and everyone else for being here this evening. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. And Sloan, I would love it if you could come on, say a word about yourself, and get the panel started.
Hi, everybody. I am Sloan Kelly, and I'm Associate Dean of Fine and Applied Arts at SNHU, which includes graphic design and media arts, which I see some of you are in, digital photography, which I just heard a couple of you graduated with that degree, and fine arts and art history. And I love every minute of it. My career was as a graphic designer, but I also love photography, and I'm quite good at it. So thanks for coming, and I've got some great questions for you all. Melissa, I'm going to start with you. What are the biggest challenges you faced when starting your photography career, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, I like this question a lot, because I think one of the first things that I'll tell you that probably never goes away to some degree is a bit of imposter syndrome. That's I experienced that early on. I still experience it on occasion. You can't let it creep in, but it's one of those things where you have to stop comparing yourself to everyone else. You have to define what your style is, understand your style, and, focus on that first and foremost. And hopefully that imposter syndrome stops creeping in. That was one of the first challenges for me. I think the other one was, uh, taking too many photos. Taking, you would have a client session for 1 hour, let's say, and I had 500 plus photos, and it was like culling for hours after that session. And I realized pretty quickly that if I want to expedite this process, there's a lot of waste in the post-production that I was putting myself through by taking too many photos. And so I was able to, by focusing on taking a handful of shots and moving on, able to then move on to the next poses or to the next, the next poses. And then, that sort of speeds up the production and then ultimately the delivery for the client. Um, and then I think that goes right into probably my third point, which is client expectations. And early on, it was, just understanding what they wanted and then going to do it. Now it's really more thoughtful, and it's having, a defined timeline for the client, setting expectations for them and what they can expect when I show up, what kind of shots I'm going to take, what kind of shots are they looking for. Really jumping on a call too was very beneficial to understand and hear them, understand what their goals were. And that really made that client experience a lot more beneficial for both of us, so that the end results were much more tied to what their goals were. And then it also made me feel fulfilled as well. So those are the three things I think I would say.
Thank you, Melissa. What skills or experiences helped you land your first paid photography job?
Yeah.
Not taking too many pictures, I gather.
Right. Let's see, skills and experiences. I think one of the first things is volunteering my time. I knew right away what kind of industry or where I wanted to focus, what my niche was. And how was I going to break into that field, knowing there were a lot of other food and beverage photographers? And that was to volunteer my time. There were a couple of breweries I really loved. And I just went to them and said, "Hey, I'm a photographer. I'm starting out. Can I take some photos of your product or of your brewery, of your people? Um, you'll get the photos at the end of this, and it gives me the experience." And more than not, I got a yes. More often than not, I got a yes, and that helped me figure out what worked well, what didn't work well, how much time I needed. And so by doing that, I had a lot of lessons learned, but then as my results got better and I delivered some of these photos to these businesses, they loved the work and said, "Hey, you want to come back and we'll pay you." Or they would recommend me to other people who they knew were looking for that kind of content because it had shown up on their social media feed and someone said, "Who took those pictures for you?" And it came back to, it was Melissa, and here's her information. And so that sort of got me into the door, and it feels like the rest was history, really.
Great. I always tell my students nonprofits are a great place to start as well because they need you, and particularly if you're not asking for pay at first. So
Yeah.
great. Thank you very much. Zlatko,
Yes.
how can students build a strong portfolio that appeals to clients or employers?
Excellent question. I think part of the portfolio building of any photographer or artist should be taken with a great amount of seriousness. That is, utilizing somebody that is an expert in that specific area. Building your own portfolio without expertise to help along only, I believe, leaves you a little bit out of the area of what is professional and what is not. Us as photographers, I think we all like certain pictures that we take more than others. But to be very objective, I think we always should use professional portfolio builders out there versus just relying on our liking or not, since it's our own work in question.
Do you think it's important to have a direction, a genre for your portfolio, a
I've worked
style?
across, sure, I worked across many genres from horror to comedy. It depends on where the portfolio is being exhibited or who it is intended for. You're not likely to go ahead and move along with a portfolio that's intended for Disney with Jason from Halloween the 13th on the front cover. So that part, I would say I rely mostly on what the offer is or what is being given as the task. So portfolios, in that essence, have their own versions. Who is the intended client? I believe to be very important.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Sarin, I have a great question for you that a lot of my students have. How is AI changing the photography industry, and what skills should aspiring photographers develop to stay competitive? And Noah, I'd love your answer to this too after Sarin.
I think AI is quickly changing the photography industry, kind of like digital did with analog. Um, I have friends who were digital photographers and they've jumped on the AI and they're already making careers out of AI. One of them is using AI and CGI and digital photography and combining all three and creating images for clients. I have another friend who's just using AI to create imagery for her clients. I know that in the fashion industry, there are companies that are producing models that do all the imaging digitally through AI. So eventually, I think that AI will be the cheapest way for a lot of companies, especially in a commercial way, to get their photographic needs. I don't think photography is going away because there'll always be a passion for it, but it's definitely something that I would say start learning, start picking up the different tools and testing them out and check out all the new ones as they come out and just kind of explore that and see how you can incorporate it into your art.
Sorry about that. Noah, what how do you think AI is changing photography?
Yes, so I have a very unique perspective on this because I
I bet.
actually I work less in photography now and more in digital asset management. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that, but there are certain softwares that companies and companies and organizations use to ingest content from the field. And I run digital asset management for Team Rubicon Disaster Response. Um, how I got here, at least to start us off, is I came from, like I said, photojournalistic background, but because I originally studied mechanical engineering, I have I understand the STEM aspect quite well. And now, as AI continues to change all these different sectors, one way to still remain relevant is digital asset management. And of course, like I described, it's when you ingest content from the field, especially like when you're sending out like paid photographer to take content for you, right? You have to worry about, okay, as like my fellow panelists said, there are certain, like, you take a million shots, a lot of photos, right? And when you have all that data, how do you condense it down into something manageable that can be provided to the end user, right? For our sake, it's developing overall brand identity and strategy for the company at large to drive funding and donor dollars, right? And we do that through metadata analysis, right? So looking at the metadata from the field and what is within the image itself, right? And so I'm looking at it from less of a perspective side and more of a business oriented side. I mean, sorry, more of a less of an artistic side. and more of a business oriented side of, okay, we need this asset for this post we're making on this day, right? And how does our development team or our graphics team or our blog team, how do they assess those assets and find them in a quick and effective manner, right? And we use the Adobe DAM, which is the digital asset management system that Adobe provides. It's the industry standard for it in general. And what I'd recommend for people who want to get into this field is try to take some sort of online class or something to learn SQL or other database management coding softwares. It's very useful, especially if you want to be in that more corporate space. And especially like as AI changes things, we don't know how things are going to go. But digital asset management will always exist as a very safe alternative.
All right, thank you very much. Back to you, Zlatko.
Yeah.
What are some common mistakes new photographers make when working with clients, and how can they avoid them?
Excellent question. I'll have to reiterate part of Melissa's answer. Taking too many photographs seems to be the first level mistake that people make. Thankfully, we have Noah, who uses the digital asset management portion to bring down the selection to a very finite point and exactly what we are looking for. Turning the client to say into a repeat client is something that is probably most difficult. You may have a great photography in front of you and you think that it's amazing, and the client doesn't see it that way. In that regard, business acumen, business negotiation at every level, I think takes a huge role in how we not only pick our clients, but make sure that they are satisfied clients and continue working with them.
Agreed. And that's actually another question that I will ask Melissa, which is beyond technical skills, what soft skills, which I think is what you were getting at, Zlatko, or business skills have been essential in your career?
Yeah. Zlatko, you have an answer? It looks like you might have something right away. No?
I'll leave the privileges up to you, Melissa.
Yeah. Well, this is always, I think it's a constant learning, especially as a freelancer. One of the things you have to keep in mind, or at least I keep in mind, is who my customer is. This may not be relevant for everyone, but let me explain what I mean by this. I work with small startup breweries, or I can work with a large scale brewery like Sam Adams, for example. And as I was starting out, I sort of had a pricing menu or pricing guide that was for everyone and anyone. And I started to realize that's not going to work. Especially, to your point, if you want to repeat customers, that those smaller craft breweries weren't going to afford, the same price bracket as a Sam Adams. So I had to adjust and pivot because I know that I wanted to continue to work with smaller breweries. I also wanted to work with larger clients, and how do you kind of balance both of those worlds? And so, I made some adjustments there, but learning how to do that and what that means when it comes to having those conversations around your pricing, all of those skills, those are tricky and challenging. And you just got to, just talking to anyone who owns a business and how they approach it, I think is often the best way to learn in those situations.
Did you want to add to that, Zlatko?
Absolutely, if I have the chance. Melissa described it perfectly, specifically this part of making sure that you not only accommodate, but choose the correct clients that you want to have. Because in essence, photography by itself, we can relate to one picture speaks 1,000 words. not all those 1,000 words are each the same for every person out there. I had the opportunity not so long ago of meeting a man by the name of Ron Haviv. I'm sure many of you have heard of him, a wartime photographer, his specific focus, and I believe he's been through every type of war zone available out there and still stayed and remained humble and mindful of the actual client that he chooses to work for.
Interesting. I think I might be Ron Hubbard is different, who I'm thinking of.
Yes,
Okay.
definitely.
Okay. Okay, great. Sarin, what types of photography jobs tend to be the most accessible for beginners?
I think doing portraiture for families and such is like the easiest way to kind of break in. Um, I think that you can also work your way into different, if you want to do commercial photography, you can work your way into it. I started out as a retoucher, and then was a digital tech for a while, an assistant, and before I was finally promoted into a photographer position. I used my network to find people, and I assisted for a long time just to get my foot in the door. And to me, that was the easiest way to start working in a commercial environment is assisting and networking and talking to everybody you can.
Great. Yeah, that was going to be my next question, actually. So I'll start with you, Sarin, is how important is networking in the photography industry? And what are some effective ways students can start building connections?
I think that honestly, sometimes it's who you know more so than how talented you are. When I first started out, my portfolio was really not great. It was, yeah, but I had a good friend who worked for Mattel, and she offered to introduce me to the director there, and that's how I got one of my first commercial work jobs. I started out as an assistant there and worked there for 5 or 6 years as a freelancer. Um, and I think the best way to go about making or doing networking is there's a lot of groups online that you can meet people through photo groups if you're on Facebook, or if there's even threads, start following other photographers and chatting with them. There's also things like PPA where you can join and network at some of their events that they host. Um, and then there's also places all over every city that where photographers get together and chat.
Great, thank you. PPA. Yeah, that's great advice. They're really good for students as well. There's one other one I can't think of, American Photographers or something. That
APA.
Yeah, that one didn't seem as advantageous for students, but I I'm not sure because I'm not a student anymore, but I do like the PPA a lot. Noah, if you could give one piece of advice to students interested in photography, what would it be?
It's an interesting question because, especially, I would just say follow your passion. I know what really got because to be fair, I actually kind of just stumbled upon photography myself. I wasn't actually looking out for it, and how it started was during the COVID-19 pandemic. I was a volunteer for the Boston Public Health Commission, and I became a logistics specialist, and I was handling the PPE distribution to vaccine sites. And I was there the first day that the vaccine came out around here, and what it really made me realize is being part of history, and on how like through like what you go through is wow, I'm seeing history, and how can I share this with other people? Since then, like directly after that, I went to the George Floyd riots in Portland, Oregon, with FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and I tell you, it was one of the scariest moments of my life up to that point. But being really at the forefront of, like I said before, I had that same moment of these are moments that need to be shared. What's happening here is something that's so impactful. It makes an impact on the world. And throughout my career, especially as a photojournalist, going to all these austere environments, you start becoming less of a photographer and more as a humanitarian. You know, because you see to put it bluntly, the horror of the real world, and you're like, what, these people need our help. And one of the most powerful tools is through the cameras, through the lens. You know, you can't show, they can't be there. A lot of people can't be there to be a responder, but you can show them how it is. At least try to, at least. So follow your passion.
And honestly, that's what worries me about AI a little bit, um, personally. So, because there's a lot of fake imagery out there, and
Oh,
that that can
at
certainly
least
be a problem.
at least I know from someone who works in, like I said, the humanitarian and photojournalistic field, at least right now. At least for our company, we're always looking for new photographers to go on to humanitarian operations, right? And I don't think that it's going to reach a moment to where, I mean, this, as much as AI is realistic, right? Images can be AI enhanced, but you have to look at the real aspect of it, like, the human aspect of photography and what actually you're doing. And that's something that can live through time and bounds.
I agree. Absolutely, Noah. You sound so wise for you look very young to me. But you've been through a lot. I've heard that. Wow. Bravo. Anybody else want to ask that question? What is some, if you could give one piece of advice to students interested in photography, what would that be? Everybody feel free. Melissa, you have your hand raised? Great.
Yeah, what I'd recommend is take your camera everywhere with you. Photograph everything. Um, it's going to make you a better photographer. It's going to help you understand, angles, light. Take it everywhere you can. The other thing I've experienced in doing this is that the camera often lets you gain access to places you wouldn't normally. And what I mean by that is, one time I was, just sitting, enjoying a meal, took a few pictures, just had my camera there. This was just for fun. And someone said, "Hey, are you a photographer?" And, at the moment you're kind of like, oh, and then yes, I'm a photographer. And then they invite you to come into the kitchen and see what it's like behind the scenes. And you get to take pictures of that environment. And suddenly you're in this space you never could have been. You're taking pictures of a subject you might not have ever been able to access before. And now you've gained another level of experience, another side quest, if you will, that is fun. And, you may learn something out of it.
Dean Sloan, if I may,
Please, I'd like that.
I found this relic of mine. I hope you can see it. It's a camera from way, way back in the day. And I just noticed somebody ask, what is the best camera? I think the best camera is the one that you have at your disposal. Um, sure, iPhone 16 is going to be great, but it may not always be there. It may not always be what you have. So, any type of camera that you have to utilize for photography purposes, obviously, is the one in front of you. I got to the point where it only took me time, skills, and some sort of, to say, organization to publish my first child's photography book. It's named Tokyo Cat Adventures, and it's very short, but the actual insides of it contain a picture of this actual cat. Did I use AI? Yes, to some extent, absolutely. I don't think you can go down the route of not using the latest technology to enhance and also make your work in the best possible quality that it is. Uh, while avoiding a few, to say, sidesteps such as plagiarism or overtly using images and AI to create a false story, I would say AI is not only the tool of the future in terms of photography, but where we also have some part of actual intelligence and not only artificial intelligence.
Anyone else? Seren?
Yeah, I think it's really important to really pay attention to light, learn lighting. I think that's like the key element of any photograph because really that's all you're doing is capturing light. And then also, I think that it's really important to curate your portfolio. Like pay attention to what you're photographing, make sure that you're choosing the best possible shot from the shoot, that it hits all of the marks that you want it to. And then if you are I'm a beauty photographer, and it is really important to work with the best makeup artists, the stylist, and actual models, and bringing everything all together to create that final image. You want to create like what the best possible thing is. So always pay attention to all the elements of the photograph, not just your own.
Terrific, thank you. And we've got about 4 minutes, and I have a question I'd like to know for the programs that we have. How important is video as an added skill for a photographer? Are you asked for video often along with your photography?
Can I jump in?
Sure, please. I didn't actually point that towards anyone, so please.
My first actual professional, meaning that it was paid kind of job, came from an event that I decided to go to at my undergraduate university, Wright State University, and I bought this Panasonic video recorder. Although there was 5, 6 people there also to photograph for this purpose, I got walked up to by a person after the event was over and said, "Hey, you know anything about video?" I said, "Well, not really. I'm only 18 and I just signed up for motion picture production, but I give it my best try." And that's how I got hired for a company that I worked for 5 years while I was studying arts down in Dayton, Ohio. Without the video part, photography, I think, loses a lot of its sense today. We have to have mindfulness, of course, that a picture is a picture and that a moving picture are two different things. But not combining those two skill areas or not focusing on both can lead to say, an unprofessional career choice.
So you're saying if you bring video into your skills, make sure you're concentrating on both and you're doing
Absolutely.
practicing both.
Yeah. I don't think
Absolutely.
there's a camera out there that we can buy that doesn't have a video function.
There isn't. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Noah, you have your hand up.
Yeah, sure. I can answer at least from my perspective. Video. Regarding like the photojournalistic space in general, it's very important to have an understanding of both principles. I know at least for like our photographers and that we hire and that we run, we always we expect them to understand both elements, and we're willing to like work with them and give them like the help through it that they need for it. But it's good to understand it. I know myself. I shot the pilot episode of the show. It's called a show on Roku called Team Rubicon, and it's about my time in Hurricane Ian. And I shot a majority of the footage with the producer, and it received 2 Emmy nominations for that. And I did not expect to go into that scope as a video person. I just kind of was, One thing about like working in austere environments, it's always like, okay, you do this or you do that, right? And you don't really understand. You just kind of pick it up and go. So if you have it in your repertoire, it's definitely a positive. I'd recommend everyone to understand a little bit, just a little bit about it.
Thank you all so much. I believe my time is up. Am I right?
Yes, Sloan, thank you so much.
Okay, because I
You
could
did.
go on forever.
I
I
know. I
appreciate
totally
this.
understand. Not absolutely. You did a fantastic job. Thank you.
Thank you.
And yeah, absolutely. I do have a couple of questions that students have submitted throughout the presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and ask those now, if y'all don't mind. And I apologize if you hear dogs in the background. We just got a package. Sarah, I wanted to start with you. One of the questions that we got was someone commenting that they struggle with pose ideas. They mentioned that they use Lemon 8 or the internet, Pinterest, things like that. How do you know the right poses to think of?
Um, it's basically when I'm framing it through the camera. When I look at the camera and I see something that I like, I tell them to keep moving. And if it feels really awkward and weird, you're doing it right because the still camera will capture that and it'll look really cool. From a fashion perspective, I'm not sure how well that works from like if you're doing family portraits and such, but that's usually the direction that I go is I just have the person keep moving around and shifting their weight a little bit, shifting their shoulders around and kind of guide them into different poses that I think look good through the camera. I know that there are 1,001 people out there who have created posing decks. I think Sue Bryce has one. I know Lindsay Adler has one. You can buy those and they'll walk you through all the different kinds of poses you can do. And Pinterest is always a great place to start out too.
Yeah, thank you. I realized I never had to say lemonade out loud before, so I hope I didn't pronounce that like an old fuddy-duddy. I don't know how you actually say it out loud, but that's a great answer. Thanks so much. Melissa, a question for you then. Amy has asked if you have any recommendations for finding internships or apprenticeships in the field. I know you mentioned just kind of going into breweries and seeing what happens, but if you could expand on that, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. Well, in my day job, my other job, we often hire freelance photographers, and the name of the where we go specifically, the resource we go to specifically is escaping me, but there are resources out there, places you can put your name, and link your portfolio so people can go find you if they are looking for freelance photographers in a specific area. That's the first thing I would do right away, right? That's not necessarily an internship, but it's something that you can do just to, start, right? For me, as I mentioned, it was, well, here's an example. There was a client I really love in the beverage space, a medium-sized Maine craft brewery, and I know that they can afford to pay me, but it wasn't one of those things they didn't know who I was, right? They're medium size. And I wanted to get their attention. And so I bought some of their product and I started playing around and photographing their product. And then I started posting it on social media and tagging them. Um, and that got their attention. And they said, "Oh, wow, thank you for taking these." They're reposting, they're using my photos. And suddenly it became an open door to a conversation about, well, can we partner? You seem to like what I'm doing here. Is there an opportunity for us to work together? And so that collaboration became a reality. And so sometimes it's, again, I think, earlier I said, doing a little bit of free work. Sometimes it could just be the social media element, right? Tag the people that you're interested in working with and see what happens. Be bold, be confident.
I love that. I think it also really highlights too the fact that there's no such thing as a simple job anymore. You can't just be a photographer. You have to have some business acumen, some social media, or, insert skill of your choice basically. But it's such a multifaceted career in general. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
no, obviously it's a great point. It's one of the things I was thinking about earlier is how much I've used social media to my benefit to network, to get more work, So Instagram and TikTok have been huge for me in making inroads with other folks that I wanted to work with.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. Zlatko, I've got a question for you. You'd
Yeah.
mentioned portfolios earlier in the presentation. So Ash is asking, what is a good portfolio website and how do they start?
Well, a good portfolio website, I'm not really sure I can pinpoint to any one specific. Again, I think it's the expertise of the portfolio builder or the portfolio maker that either breaks or makes the deal. To add on to Melissa's point of different platforms available out there for even students to put their work out, I'm thinking of three. IM, which is spelled EYEEM, Envato being the second one, ENVATO, and Shutterstock. These three just came to mind as Melissa was mentioning the importance of, I know that they can pay me, but do I really want to fit into that entire frame that I'm trying to build my portfolio on? Selectively, I can be pretty certain that somebody the size of Leo Burnett Agency or Getty Images and so forth will more than help you out choose those specific images that relate not only to the masses, but to those very finite niche communities that may find your work to be exceptional.
I love that. And I'm really kind of hearing this theme too, in a way, that there's no such thing as a perfect website or a perfect camera. It's really a question of doing it, just doing the work. And what is it? A good job is a finished job. There's some phrase like that. So just being able to get it started is probably the best first step, it sounds like. Perfect. Noah, I've got a question for you as well. Someone has asked, what are some common mistakes that photographers make that a beginner should try to avoid?
That is a good question, especially as the guy who's responsible for receiving content that we get from the field. One of the largest, especially with our beginner photographers, is they send us way too much content, like way too much. Just like how like Zlatko and everyone else reiterated, they shoot way too much. And one of the things that I believe in, especially when I do digital asset management, is more is less, right? Think about how the end user is going to use your content, right? Like for example, if you like for one day on deployment, you send me 50 images, right? But you expect maybe only one social media post, which would be maybe 5 or 10 images at most, right? So it's like, how do we not inundate our clients with that content and provide the highest quality standard to show off really what you can do as a photographer?
Yeah, just the confidence
I,
of that too, right? Go ahead,
if I
Zlatko.
just may quickly add, Noah
Mhm.
made a great comment here, and I think we learned this lesson a long time ago: quality over quantity. Annie Leibovitz, probably the world's most famous photographer, I would have to say, or portrait photographer, uh, came out in an interview and said this exact same thing that all three, four of us have been talking about. It's not always about the breadth or the size of the photos that we choose. It's choosing to take the photos that we know will leave some sort of impact or professional effect after they're taken. So quality always more important than quantity.
Yeah, so an interesting question. Looks like Alexander too in the chat has asked, when shooting too many photos, how do you go through and really pick out the few that are the best? So I open that to anyone, but really Zlatko and Noah to continue that conversation. Like, how do you pick out which ones are the best?
If I may, Noah, on the
Yeah, go right ahead.
digital asset management part, there are companies out there more than 15 or 20 years. I think one of them, Noah could confirm, Ikegami, that was working within this digital asset management area. And the technology, which obviously Southern New Hampshire University is very keen on, and I'm thankful for having that as part of my education there, including the innovation, takes down that amount of what is truly upper quality and no quality at all.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. I know so in addition to like my job in running digital asset management, my company, I also mentor photographers. And when they cull photos, right, especially like in the field or in an austere environment, you look at what can best tell the story of what's going on, right? Now, I spoke before about impact, right? And that's what we all are looking for in our images. What can drive emotions? What can show people the unedited, filtered version of what's happening, right? And when you look at your images, maybe an image would say it better, maybe an image wouldn't say it better, but I always just tell them, look for what really resonates with you and what really makes you feel something.
Yeah. What resonates with you? Noah, I wonder too, because you've used this word a couple times. So just for my own clarity, maybe for others' clarity, but in this context, when you say austere, how do you mean that?
So, I mean, environments that are not the standard, like, oh, you have like, there's two aspects of it, right? There's one as photographer and one as just in general, like just living a person, right?
Hmm.
As photographer, it can be like the lack of light, good lighting, right, to capture images, or the lack of light, or it's like it's raining like really heavily outside, right? And then when it comes to like humanitarian action, it's like what's how you can survive, right?
Hmm.
Because you're in these places where it's like you don't have running showers, you don't have hot food, and you're really roughing it, right? So it's like how can you manage all that in those environments, plus also provide a quality product to the end user?
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Appreciate that. And we've got about 3 minutes, and there was a question that came through the chat that I absolutely love. So I'd love to close with this. And I'll actually ask all four of you. We'll start with Melissa. But what would be your recommendation for finding your niche in photography?
It's a great question. Finding your niche. You probably will have a couple. But it really will come down to what are you the most passionate about? Passion will be the thing that drives you. What is it you're excited to go and photograph? What would you be excited to photograph over and over and over again? That's going to be the determining factor of what your niche is.
What are you excited to wake up at 4 in the morning and go shoot? That sort of thing.
Exactly. That's
I love
exactly
that.
right. Yeah. One thing I
Perfect.
want to add there too, just quickly, a little anecdote for you all that I discovered probably in the last couple of years is that I have two Instagram accounts where I post my photography. One is broad, whatever, like my travels, my daily life, kind of shots of my dogs, whatever. And one is very focused on the craft beer industry. The one where it's a swath of everything has significantly less followers than the one that's purely focused on craft beer. So your niche will be a big factor in how you gain your clients and where you get your clients. And again, that social media factor is important for you.
Oh, that's great. That's a great tidbit. I'll go counterclockwise on my screen. So, Saren, what would you recommend for someone trying to find their niche in photography?
I think your passion is a good place to start. It's also something that is viable that you can do and you can continue to do it all the time. I started out shooting fashion and my niche is much more beauty nowadays, although I still shoot fashion all the time. But my focus and what I really put on my website is mostly my beauty products and my beauty photo shoots because that's what I'm passionate about. I love the creativity. I love being able to change it up and explore it in all sorts of different ways. And I find myself always coming back to that. So it's something that, and it can change over the years. It just depends on what you're focused on and what you want to do.
Yeah, what you come back to all the time. That's great.
Yeah.
Noah, what about you? What would you recommend?
It's interesting because everyone else of course passion drives us to do what we especially this field, and at least for me is number one is I'm a humanitarian. I'm here to support the missions that are going on, and that it can be shown through the images and the photos that I produce, right? Because the most important thing I can say is be invested in a cause, right? Especially when you are in these environments or like when you're responding to these things, right? Start to try to understand who the people are, right? Who are being affected and try to understand. I mean, some of my favorite instances of my work are like, is a quick story. When I was in the evacuation of Kabul, Afghanistan, I was there when they first sent out, when the Afghans first landed their planes after from being sent away from Afghanistan, and just like the faces on the people and the families that are broken up, you can just see the actual unedited version. And I try to capture it in my photography. And so that goes back to passion, because I feel it, I can convey it.
It's a great point. I know we didn't really talk a lot today about the sort of social responsibility aspect of photography, but I can tell you I was a kid when National Geographic ran the Afghan girl photo cover, and I still remember the first time I ever saw that. That will never leave me for the rest of my life. So I think that's a really great point as well. And Zlatko, I'd like to finish with you. What would you recommend for a student who's trying to find their niche in photography?
Excellent. Thank you for honoring me and having me board this panel. I would just say maximize everything out there within the scope of photography that allows you to make the best photo at the end of the day. It's storytelling. We transitioned a little bit into the video portion of it, but just photography by itself can also have a textual um, component to it, which explains what the picture might not be in everyone's eyes, but with a sentence or two, we are able to draw in those people that care about the actual storytelling part, which I believe is the fundamental or level one of photography as far back as it goes.
I think storytelling is a pretty fundamental human art, however it's expressed, and I love that. And with that, I think I cannot think of a better note to end on. I've kept everyone a little bit past, but I think that was a really important question, and I appreciate everyone answering it. And I appreciate everyone taking the time this evening. Thank you again to our panelists for the great conversation. Thank you to everyone here in attendance. With that, I will close the session, and I will wish everyone a good night and happy picture taking. Thank you.
Bye bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.